欢迎你多登到咱线上水礼甲转会的课程。这个课程是第5个课程，将由蒙恩教会创办人主任牧师巴斯比利分享，让做阵来学习蒙恩教会的历史。
Hello, I'm Pastor Billy Lee, the founder of Blessed Grace Church. In 2006, I felt God leading me to leave my previous church, where I had been pastoring for 11 years, to plant a new church. God revealed to me that this church mission is to reach out to the marginalized, the oppressed, the elderly, and those rejected by society. Its purpose is to deliver them out of bondage into the freedom found in Christ. I saw confirmation through prayer with 2 spiritual mentors for nearly 6 months. We ultimately felt assured that my call was from God after listening to a recorded prophecy by a lady named Sarah Young from the United States. In the prophecy, Sarah Young shared that while fasting and praying with a group of women, she received a divine message to convey to Singapore. God revealed to her that 5 churches would extend invitations for her to share this prophecy. And during her visit to Singapore, Sarah spoke at 4 churches. And in the 4th church, she shared the message that she heard from God. The Chinese-speaking churches in the East would be responsible for bringing the gospel to China, ultimately leading the gospel back to Jerusalem. Sarah said that God told her that this movement will mirror the events of the book of Exodus, where Moses, acting as God's deliverer, delivered the Israelites out of slavery and brought them into the promised land. As I listened to the prophecy, the word Exodus strongly resonated with me. I felt deeply convicted that this was God's calling for me to establish a church and fulfill this mission of delivering those enslaved by the devil and leading them to the freedom found in Christ. So I resigned from my previous church and subsequently founded Blessed Grace Church. Held its inaugural service on March 3rd, 2007. We held our first service at Golden Theatre on Beach Road with an initial congregation of about 70 members, predominantly elderly individuals, alongside a few younger members. The church began as a predominantly Hokkien-speaking congregation, with a smaller English-speaking congregation consisting primarily of the children of members from the Hokkien service. The early years of pastoring Blessed Grace Church were marked by significant challenges. My inexperience in church leadership, coupled with an anxious desire for growth, led to several poor decisions. This resulted in declining morale, particularly during the church third year. Consequently, people began leaving the church. Each week, families would approach me after service to inform me of their decision to leave. It was heartbreaking, and I was lost and confused. I began to doubt myself and even considered closing the church. The final blow came when a family of 6 approached me after a church service to inform me of their departure. To my dismay, they proceeded to take photos with various members while publicly declaring their decision to leave. It was a happy occasion for them, but I was left feeling dejected and demoralized. I realized I couldn't continue anymore and poured my heart out to God. asking him to either close the church or provide someone else to lead it. God heard my cry, and he immediately began to work, though I wasn't aware of it at the time. Because the next day, I received a phone call from a missionary friend in Thailand. He asked if I would be willing to travel to Medan to encourage a Hokkien-speaking congregation that helps poor children. I eagerly agreed, viewing it as an opportunity for me to take a break. I gathered a few fellow church members and we traveled to Medan. I was unaware of the organization name or the identities of the two brothers who had established it. So we were met at the airport by the two brothers, and after lunch, they brought us to the place where they conducted their outreach programs. Upon arrival, the first thing that caught my eye was the name of the organization, Exodus, displayed above the building's entrance. I stood there stunned, as I knew this was no coincidence, and quickly took a picture. And as I stood there, I felt an overwhelming sense of God's presence. And God spoke to me. He said, Pastor Billy, you may have forgotten the word I gave you to start this church, but I have not. I brought you here to reaffirm that calling. Do not give up. I am with you. Tears streamed down my face as I stood in God's presence. And over the next 3 days, we ministered to children and the most impoverished members of the community. And our trip concluded with a debriefing meeting. And during the meeting, the brothers revealed that they had founded Exodus in the year 2000. The ministry had been thriving until 2008, when the global financial crisis severely impacted their businesses. And facing financial hardship, they considered closing the ministry. However, they persevered. One brother decided to pawn some jewelry to raise funds, while the other brother took out a loan. Through these efforts, the ministry was able to persevere and continue its work despite the hardships. And at that moment, God spoke to me again. He said, Pastor Billy, look at these two brothers. They have served the poor through 8 years of hardship, and you are thinking of giving up after just 3 years? How can you give up so easily? I sat there and I wept openly. The others were unaware of the personal encounter I was having with God. In my tears, I told God, I will continue the work, but you must take over control. I will learn to let go and allow you to guide the church. A deep sense of peace settled over me, and I knew that God had heard my prayer. The following day, I departed from Medan and was greeted at the airport by a brother from the church. He came to me and excitedly shared that a property agent friend of his had informed him about a new building with premises available for rent by the church. He took me to see the place, and upon seeing it, I immediately recognized God's hand in its provision. I knew without a doubt that this was where we were meant to start anew, and I immediately told him we would rent it. So we signed the lease for the premises located at 18 Arumugam Road. We then began renovations and finally moved into our new location in March 2010. With the move, the church experienced a renewed sense of purpose and a feeling of starting afresh. The move revitalized the church, boosting morale and inspiring a deeper commitment among the members. The establishment of Blessed Grace Social Services BGSS, the church social outreach arm, in 2014 proved to be a significant turning point in the church. We began by reaching out to individuals trapped in a cycle of gambling addiction and debt, providing support for them and their families. We later expanded our services to serve the poor and elderly, initially in Chai Chi and subsequently in Circuit Road. Subsequently, our ministry expanded to include prison outreach, where we established a support group to assist inmates upon their release. We also initiated a dedicated outreach program to support Filipino migrant domestic helpers. Now, with BGSS and its ministries in place, I recognize the fulfillment of God's call for Blessed Grace Church. Following the example of Moses in Exodus, Blessed Grace Church is setting captives free and liberating the oppressed from the devil's grasp, bringing them into the newfound freedom of Christ. When the church was established in 2007, God had given me a 10-year vision with 3 goals: to build a strong church, establish a thriving social service arm, and launch a social enterprise as a business venture to serve the beneficiaries of BGSS. Upon reaching the 10-year milestone in 2017, I recognized that through God's divine guidance and leading, we had successfully established 2 of the 3 goals: a strong congregation and a dedicated social service arm. And to celebrate this milestone, we organized a 10-year anniversary dinner for the church. The 2 brothers from Medan, along with their staff and volunteers, joined us for this happy occasion. We acknowledge the critical role their organization played in Blessed Grace Church's 10-year journey. As the 10-year vision drew to a close, I earnestly sought God's direction for the church. My prayer was simple: Lord, you gave me a 10-year vision, and we have fulfilled 2 of its 3 goals. Lord, where do we go from here? Unknown to me, God was already preparing to reveal the next phase of Blessed Grace Church journey. At our church camp that year, in December 2017, we had invited Pastor Nick Reski from Australia to speak. At the camp, when he announced the topic that he would be sharing on church transitions, I immediately knew we were about to receive divine guidance from God again. During his presentation at the camp, Pastor Nick Reski displayed a slide with 3 boxes, explaining that biblically and in his own experience, God's new works progress through 3 phases: planting, preparing, and possessing. As I looked at the 3 boxes he had drawn, God spoke to me, revealing that this would be Blessed Grace Church journey in the coming years. We had completed the first phase of planting, and we're now entering the next phase, preparing. I was convinced this was from God, because earlier in November, Pastor Peter Lee from Penang had preached at my church and encouraged me to attend the Equipping Track seminar at Banner Church in Taiwan. He shared how he had used the Equipping Track taught at the seminar to strengthen the spiritual foundations of his church. I've been unsure about attending the seminar, but after hearing Pastor Nick Wesky speak at a church camp, I felt a strong conviction to go. In January 2018, my wife and I went to Taiwan for a month of training. Returning from the training, I gathered my pastoral staff and shared the insights I had gained. We delved into the training materials, charting a course for establishing an equipping track within the church. We planned a 5-year rollout for the equipping track, dedicating the first 2 years to lesson preparation and the following 3 years to implementation. This would mark the church transition into the preparing phase. In 2021, as the 5-year preparing phase concluded, God spoke to me through the story of Joshua in chapter 6, revealing that the church had finished its preparation and was about to enter its promised land. Just as Joshua led the Israelites around Jericho 7 times before its walls fell, God revealed that he would use the next 7 years to bring revival to Blessed Grace Church. We stand here today in this third phase, possessing the land. I pray that you are inspired by the story of Blessed Grace Church, a church birthed by God and led by Him every step of the way. We will be honored to welcome you into the family, whether through baptism or transfer. Thank you.